Hello, just testing, just testing.
Ryan. Good afternoon, everybody. Ryan. All right, so Ryan's made me the co-host. All right, and I see Ryan as a co-host. All right, Ryan, I'm gonna need some people to be able to mute and unmute themselves. In addition to Dr. DiBiase, Michelle, and Rob, I need Diane Santa, Tina Fogel, Ed Clark, George Simmons.
Okay, Dr. Brice, it's Brian. Randy's actually playing the host. I am just helping him out here. So he's adding everybody in as they join as co-hosts if they're a district admin. So we will clean that up quickly here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if I can get my screen set up. Okay. Dr. D, I saw you somewhere. You ready to get started?
Yes, I am, Dr. Brice.
All right, you want to start us off? It's your house. I feel like I'm a guest.
Welcome, everybody. Hello, hello, welcome. This is our Mount Hope High School virtual town hall. We are going to be answering a lot of the questions that many of you came up with and submitted over the last few days since we began, since we sent out the Google form for tonight's meeting. A lot of the questions, I'm sure, some of the questions may have been answered at the school committee meeting on the other night, but otherwise we can get started. Dr. Brice, did you want to open with any news introductions?
Yep, and so first of all, thank you everyone who's taken time out of your schedule to join us today. This is, I think, our second. We were at Rockwell yesterday. And we've got another one tomorrow and then 3 more for next week. We continue to get new information on a daily basis. And we received our feedback on our plan yesterday from RIDE. It looks very promising. And so as a result, we're going to share the plan and the detailed plan, which is about 87 pages with our community. We hope to be able to do that tomorrow. Certainly by Friday at the latest. In addition, I would like to begin and lay out the process that we think really works. And that process is that we have a number of questions. We want to very quickly go through the questions, give answers. And what we typically do is Dr. Diane Santa, the assistant sup for curriculum instruction, and she's waving. We tend to alternate through the questions so that we get the questions. There will be questions that Dr. DiBiase and her team will be able to answer. There will be other questions that folks like Tina Fogel, our Chief Operating Officer, who's responsible for transportation facilities and things, will answer at a high level. There may be things that our director of facilities, George Simmons, answers specific to HVAC systems and things like that. I don't know if Rose Muller, our director of technology, is here. If she's not, we will take those questions. And we've got Ed Clark, our director of student support services, who will also be here to assist us and take questions as well. So if that is good for everybody, let me start off with just a very brief recap of information that we have shared previously. This is clearly an unprecedented time for all of us. And so first and foremost, I hope that everyone is well, everyone is staying safe, everyone is taking care of themselves, their family, their children. And we eagerly are planning for the reopening of school for whatever that may look like, whether it be in person, whether it be hybrid, or whether it be full distance learning. There are 4 areas that are the focus of our planning this summer. And I would also like to thank all the members of the team that have been a part of the planning discussions. There are about 60 people. I see many of them here in the Zoom hangout with us, or the Zoom call with us. And so again, thank you for your work and your support. The 4 areas that are really a focus for us are, number 1, our focus is on the health and safety of all of our students and staff. We're focused on what are the models of instruction that we have. We're focused on providing a strong academic program, or a comprehensive academic program. And then, of course, in order to pay for all of this, we need to think about budget, personnel, additional personnel that we may need, and other concerns that may arise. So first and foremost, when we think about the health and safety of all of our students, one of the things that we know is that we are going to have to increase the number of times young people are asked to wash their hands. And that may be 4 or 5 times per day. Certainly, I see Ellen here, who's one of our nurses, the nurse at Mount Hope. Thanks for being here. There's been talk about students would get hand sanitizer when they get on the bus in the morning. They get hand sanitizer or wash their hands when they walk into the building, before they go to lunch, after they come back from lunch, and maybe 1 or 2 other times throughout the day. And so just the routine hygiene of using hand sanitizer, washing hands, is something that we clearly are going to stress. We also have the issue of wearing masks, and I believe that that is going to be resolved. All the superintendents were on a call with the governor and the commissioners today, and our plan has been very specific about requiring masks to be worn. And then we wanted to provide students with an opportunity to remove their mask if they were appropriately social distanced in the classroom. I think what we're going to do, because I don't think people understand that. So let me just say, I think as a system, we'll take the responsibility for not being as clear as possible. But I think with new guidance from the state, our position is going to be all students, all staff will wear masks all day. So that is going to be the new position. What I'm going to ask all of our principals to do at all of our schools is to build in time where students will be able to get outside. They will be socially distant, more than 6 feet apart, where they will be able to remove their mask for some period. It won't be long, but it may be 10 or 15 minutes. And then when they return, they have to go back inside and put their mask back on. And so we're going to clarify that. We want to keep everyone safe. But we also know that there may, in addition to during lunch, when students are socially distanced, and they will be in the cafeteria or other places where there may be plexiglass partitions, we want to make sure that students also have that opportunity to remove their mask and everyone stay safe. So that's health and safety. We're going to disinfect the buildings multiple times in between classes. All of those things are critically important. We also know that at the secondary level, at the middle school and the high school, our method or our model of instruction will be that we are bringing back students in two groups. The first group is A through L. The second group is M through Z. And we're doing that because when we walked in and we visited the school and looked at classrooms and tried to make sure that we could put students 6 feet apart, we recognized that we would not be able to put the full number of students into a classroom and have everyone socially distanced. So that is why we're doing that. We submitted that to RIDE. RIDE has, they have reviewed our plan and have not told us that we cannot do that. And so that is the plan or the status moving forward. So for the high school, for Mount Hope, our options are that we will bring back all students. We will bring back half the students A through L. We will bring back the other students M through Z on alternating days. So what will happen is the first group will come to school that first week, 3 days, and then the other 2 days, right? The other 2 days, they will go back. So I see people saying 2. So it might be, so the first group goes 2, the second group goes 3, and then they switch. Yep.
Well, it's actually 2 and 2. It'll just rotate through our schedule. So 2 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 2 days off.
Yeah, okay, right, which means, okay, so it means that one group will get the third day on that Friday and the first day the next week. Yep, all right, thank you. And so, but it's critically important that people understand that, and we'll share information with everybody to make sure that they're aware of that. So that's model of instruction. If something happens and the governor or RIDE make a decision, and the decision is to go to a limited schedule, we will have to once again look at the number of students that are actually in our buildings on a given day. But one of the ideas would be on a limited schedule by grade level, they may attend school 1 day per week. And so that's on a limited, but what that would really mean is that we would, across the state, we would have seen a significant spike in infections and things like that. And then finally, if the governor and the commissioner make that decision to go to full distance would look much the way it did last spring, except we have feedback based on what happened last spring. We think what occurred was really pretty outstanding, that teachers did a great job, students did a great job, but even when you do really good work, there's still room for improvement. And so we have identified what we consider to be best practices, and we'll talk about them as we go through the questions. Best practices for our teachers, best practices for our students. One of those best practices is that students have to turn their camera on. They cannot merely log in, but not turn their camera on. And so that is something that we are absolutely, we heard from teachers, we heard from parents, we even heard from some students that said, yeah, it's kind of strange talking to sort of the blank screen, but you hear the voice, but you don't see anybody. And so we took that into account. And then lastly, and so that really is, so that is about the models of instruction. When we talk about academics and having a comprehensive academic program, one of the things that we have been adamant about from the beginning of distance learning back in the spring is that we believe that we needed to provide our students with the full range of academic content, which is core academic as well as co-curricular. So we needed them to have chorus and to have band and PE and health. For those of you that do not know, the research base on distance learning prior to last year was very thin, very Spartan. And one of the things that it suggested was You don't try to introduce new content. You only do remediation. You only do it for a very limited amount of time. And we all looked at that and thought it was ridiculous. And we have very good evidence that the majority of our students were able to attend distance learning to learn to perform well. But I said the majority, not all. We know that some students may not have been as successful in distance learning. And that's another part of the process improvement that we need to make for next year. And we certainly are in discussions about that. Finally, there's the issue of budgeting and cost. And so I will just mention, we are in the process of greatly increasing the expenditure for things like cleaning and disinfecting products. So if anyone is worried about whether or not desks will be clean throughout the day, desks will certainly be clean in every classroom throughout the day. Will we have disinfectant wipes and other things in classrooms? Absolutely. We've increased the budget by about $111,000 for cleaning materials, and we've increased the budget for our nurses by about $100,000 for additional medical supplies and equipment that they have requested. And so we really are committed to making sure that we provide our folks, our schools, ultimately our students and staff with all the things that they're going to need in order to be successful. So having said that, I feel like I'm out of breath a little bit. And I am going to go through, Dr. DiBiase and her team put together a list. I think there are, I want to say 60 questions on this list. Oh, I'm sorry.
About 51.
Yeah, 51. Sorry, not 60, 51. So we're going to go through, we're going to try to answer them. And here's what we're going to do. Here's what I think it works best. It worked really well yesterday. We'll try to do it today. So it's about 6:17. We're going to go through these questions. And Diane and I are going to alternate, and we're going to really try to answer these questions very quickly. And then we're going to open up the conversation so that people on the chat can actually ask questions and things like that. If you are on YouTube, we had this happen yesterday. Someone on YouTube actually asked a question, but they sent it to my email address. I'm not actually looking at my email right now. So I would ask, if you have a question, can you send it to Tina Fogel? She is our Chief Operating Officer. And so you should see her name right here. She's waving. And if you just add at bwrsd.org, it will come to her and she'll be able to give it to us right before we start asking all the general questions. All right, so having said that, Diane, you want to flip a coin or you want to go first? I want to go first. What's your pleasure, man?
It's up to you.
All right, ladies first.
Yeah.
Ladies first, your call.
Good evening, and thank you all for your wonderful questions. They are very similar in some ways to questions that we've received from other schools. So I'm going to jump right in and address some of the questions related to what distance learning looks like and how it will be different this year than the spring. So as Dr. Brice said, at the end of last year, we collected a lot of data from teachers, families, and students, and we compiled all of that to make some improvements for distance learning next year. And one of the things that we found is that because it was all so new and it happened so quickly, that we didn't have clear expectations. So what we saw were a lot of inconsistency across classrooms, and we learned a lot from the teachers who were able to just develop great protocols and routines, and we collected videos and artifacts of that, and it was used to shape some expectations. So here's what we're expecting for distance learning this upcoming school year. We expect all teachers to hold a morning meeting or a beginning of class meeting to greet students, to make social emotional connections and explain the learning expectations for the day. We expect all teachers to use Google Classroom, or in grades K through 2, that would be Seesaw, as a learning management system to post a daily agenda, assignments, and resources. We want that consistency so that when students go from class to class, they know where things will be. And also so that parents, if they're following along or trying to help, they know that that information will be there. We expect all teachers to conduct daily interactive live lessons, not just post assessments or assignments. And we expect students to fully participate. We would like to see norms established for distance learning with every teacher as they greet their students at the beginning of the year. And that would include, as Dr. Brice said, having their cameras turned on during live lessons, being dressed appropriately and ready to learn, and fully participating in the lessons. And that's what attendance will be based on, not just did you go in and sign in. Also, another improvement is this year we're setting screen time limits. In grades K through 2, we expect the screen time should not exceed 1 to 2 hours. In grades 3 through 5, that would be 3 hours. Same for 6 through 8, 3 hours. In grades 9 through 12, we expect that screen time shouldn't exceed 4 hours. And that doesn't mean that students won't have some assignments beyond that, but we just don't want them sitting in front of a computer for more than that time. To go along with this, we'll be providing professional development for teachers this summer, and then also continuing throughout the school year, so that we can make sure that everybody has the skills to do that. Is there anything I forgot to add to that, Dr. Brice?
No, I think that was outstanding. All right, so let's take a couple of specific questions. There's a question about distance learning and a student's underlying health condition. Is a doctor's letter needed? A doctor's letter is not needed to choose distance learning as an option. And that's for any parent. If the parent wants that for their children, they can make that choice. Someone asked, will distance learning be a comparable learning experience to the peers in school? I would say yes and no. So again, I think we all recognize that being in class every single day with a teacher is the penultimate educational experience. But we also believe that distance learning and being able to see the lesson live is a comparable experience. Now you may not, the student may not have the benefit of seeing every comment that their fellow classmate makes as we use as the document camera, but we certainly believe that they will receive the key concepts and benefit from the lesson. But I do think there is going to be a slight difference, not much, but a slight difference. If you wanted to change your submission, we will ask all parents again to submit their request sometime probably the first week or not next week, but the week after. So we're gonna give people time to read our plan and then to commit. Someone is asking a question about homeschooling. Well, hold on. We've been in lockdown for most part since the beginning of the outbreak. Our son did well in distance learning. Why would we not continue? Well, certainly it is a parent's choice to continue. We are building plans based on what RIDE and the governor have requested of every school system in the state. But we wanted as a district to give our parents flexibility. So for that parent, if you believe it's really working well for your child and that's something that you want to do, absolutely, we stand in support of your decision. Someone also asked, we want homeschooling for at least the first quarter and then see what the infection rate will be. Don't you think that might be a good idea? All right, so there is a difference between distance learning and homeschooling. Homeschooling is when you as a parent make a decision that you are going to remove your student from school, you actually have to fill out paperwork, submit it to the principal and to my office, saying that you're going to remove the student and that you are going to provide all the instruction. I actually think that some parents may not be clear about the difference. And so it's important for me to explain it. In a homeschooling situation, you as the parent would be completely responsible for all materials of instruction, the content that your child would learn. And so if that is what you want to do, you can fill out the paperwork, and that is an option. It is not an option that I think most parents are going to want to take. Distance learning, however, is an opportunity for your child to actually learn the material and the curriculum that is provided in class or in the school building. And they are learning that from our certified teachers and teacher assistants. And they have the full range of resources that are provided to our students. And so we think that distance learning is a viable option for parents that are concerned about their children returning to school in the fall for any reason. And we're asking parents that want that option to use that option for the first quarter of the year. Dr. Stan, I think you went over what will distance learning look like. Will teachers teach synchronously or simultaneously? Will classes be live streamed for remote students? The answer is yes. We don't call it live streaming. And so the difference is when you think about live streaming, oftentimes people think about if you type in, you want to see the George Washington Bridge and see how much traffic is on the George Washington Bridge at any time. That's a live stream. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is that teachers would actually have very tightly controlled, would actually control Google Meets, where they would be able to only invite students in their particular class to log into the Meet so that they would be able to see the live lesson as it takes place. Once that class period is ended, that Google Meet is closed by the teacher, but that session has been recorded and would then be posted later on by the teacher in case someone missed the live showing, and then they could go and work on it at their leisure. Will hands-on science labs be taking place in school? And if so, how will it be handled if full distance learning is chosen? Well, first and foremost, I think regardless of what parents choose, whether they choose to have their students work from a distance, whether we're in a hybrid or a full distance learning, there are just some things that are going to be different in school this year, just like they were in the spring. And so I'll give you a good example. So we've had a number of conversations with our music teachers about band and chorus, two critical co-curricular programs and courses of study. We absolutely want them. We think that we do a really great job with that. And so that's something that we know is going to continue. But we also know that we're going to have to teach those co-curricular courses differently, and that students will have a different experience. Different doesn't mean better or worse, it just means different. So right now, at the beginning of the year, while we're still dealing with this, the virus, we will not be able to, I believe, have 100 students in a band room singing. That would not be something that any health professional anywhere in the country, well, let me rephrase that. It would not be something that the CDC and RIDO, the Rhode Island Department of Health, would say is an appropriate action to take on behalf of students. I can't speak as to whether or not there might be some other health professionals that would say different. I think one or two more. Will Mount Hope High School be offering additional online courses outside of the BWRSD? Interesting question that we have not looked into. But I think if the question is, do we still have the ability to do maybe dual enrollment or other courses with some of our college, higher education colleagues, colleague institutions? I think the answer is yes, but I think they're also working to build their schedule. So we just haven't finalized anything yet. I don't know if Dr. D, if you have any additional information on that.
Not so much on the, well, for the advanced course network classes or the SAIL program that they've been running all summer, I'm sure that those types of classes will continue to be offered. I'm not sure specifically, you know, what the question is referring to, but we also have use of Edgenuity online platform, which offers you know, all core content courses, as well as some elective courses and things like that. Many students, you know, opt to take some of those courses. So they're either already built into the student schedule, or, you know, if there is some changes in a student schedule that they prefer to do an online course through Edgenuity, we're happy to do that as well. So those are the options.
Thank you. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Santa. You want to handle electives?
Sure. Let me just find my spot here. So we talked about how electives such as band and chorus will be conducted, and that is still being worked on. Our music educators are phenomenal, and they are so well connected at the state level, and they're constantly reading up on what's happening across the country. So as we get closer to the school year, we will have more information, but we will do our very best within the guidelines to maintain the programs that we currently have. We'll still have the courses, but like as Dr. Brice said, it might be a little bit different. How will my child be able to do his elective classes if he has to be in a stable pod? So at the high school level, we will not be doing stable groups or pods. In grades K through 8, we will, because students are by grade level, so we can do that. But at the high school, because of so many courses being mixed grade levels, they will not be stable groups. So the reopening of schools should not impact your child's ability to take elective classes. We didn't want to limit anyone, and that's why we didn't go with that model.
Yep.
Since high school students will be split in half, with half being in school and half distance learning, rotating bi-weekly, can you elaborate on how you will plan on ensuring that classes like guitar ensemble remain successful? Being able to play together is very important. So again, our music educators are right on top of this. In the spring, they came up with a couple of different ways to allow groups to be able to play together virtually, and I know that they're still working on that. So I trust them to be able to make the best decisions in doing as much as we possibly can to maintain the quality of our programs. And that's it for electives. Do you want me to go on, Dr. Brice, to any of the other questions?
Yeah, you know what? Do you want to take the health ones? Because I think two of them, why don't you take that first group of health, and then I'll take from food services below. Okay,
great. So in relation to health, how will you create stable groups? We talked about that. How many students will my son be in contact with in classes each day? That I really don't have an answer to, and that's one of the reasons why we are requiring that all classes maintain social distancing and that all students wear masks throughout the day, because we can't limit the number. As far as being in a large group setting, the state has very clear guidelines on the number of groups that we can even have together. So we have to follow that, which basically means that we can't have more than 2 to 3 classes of students together in a large space. And I'll use the cafeteria as an example. Based on the guidelines for social distancing, we would not be able to fit more than 2 to 3 classes in there, and they have to be 14 feet apart from one another. So it's very different. let's see what else. Who will be responsible to
Mhm.
notify students and staff if someone becomes sick? So again, there are very clear protocols from the Rhode Island Department of Health as to how a school responds if someone has symptoms at school, whether that be staff or students, and what the procedure is. And families would be notified immediately. And we would ask that you come and pick your child up within 1 hour. Each school is required to have an isolation room that the student would be in, and the nurse would do an assessment. And I don't know if, yeah.
Diane, let me interrupt for a moment. This is one of those areas where there has just been an evolution in how we handle things. And so we have, as a society, have always really preached the importance of perfect attendance and attending school every day, and sometimes going to school even when you're not quite feeling as healthy and as well as you typically would have. We are now asking people to change that. We are asking for students and staff that are under the weather to stay home. And I will give you a perfect example. Major League Baseball, one morning, because Ed Clark, the director of student services, and I were talking about this. The manager of, I think, the Chicago White Sox woke up and had the sniffles and wasn't feeling well, and called the team, and the team said, stay in your hotel, you're off today, right? It is important for everyone to understand that when students are sick, when staff is sick, they need to stay home until they no longer have symptoms. If they believe that the symptoms are in any way similar to what would be COVID related, we strongly encourage that they would go and get tested. I see Ellen here. Ellen, our nurse at Mount Hope. Have we missed anything in explaining the importance of, staying home if you have any type of, cough or cold symptoms? Hold on, can I unmute? Okay.
I think something happened to me. Sorry. That's not unusual. Can you still hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Without seeing me? So one of the things that when you look at sort of the update on the pre-screening from the Rhode Island reopening is, if you go to the bottom of it, after it asks you about being out of the country, being out of the state, is symptoms that you can't associate with allergies or another non-infectious disease. So you're looking at, there are allergies. So people like me are going to have a runny nose. Do I think that's COVID related? No, it's allergy related. So we're going to have to work on teasing out symptoms, but we're going to be much more, there'll be more kids going home and more kids staying out of school in my estimation than in previous years.
Yep. Thank you. And we have one, let me handle this one. So we have a family that are saying that they are a little older and worried that their son may be exposed to others at school and potentially bring home the virus. How can we guarantee that will not happen? And so I think first and foremost, as school administrators, as the superintendent of schools, I cannot guarantee that something's not going to happen. All right. And so I just want everyone to be very clear about that. I can tell you what we are going to do as a school district and as leaders of the school. Dr. DiBiase, Michelle King, Rob Hanlon, all the district staff, all the teachers, Ellen, everybody. We are going to work as hard as possible to make sure that we have implemented everything that we possibly can to keep students as safe as possible, to keep staff as safe as possible. That is absolutely the best that we can do. I cannot guarantee that something's not going to happen. But I think what we are really trying to do at the direction of RIDE and based on the conversations we have is to prepare for almost every contingency that we can think of and have a quick response ready to go, so that, you know, if this happens, we know what to do. If something else happens, here's how we would handle that. And so that's how we're working with that. Dr. Santa?
There are several questions related to whether or not classmates would need to quarantine if someone does test positive. And then there's also a question about when would it be safe for students to return. Throughout this process, we will be in constant contact with Rhode Island Department of Health in the event that a student or staff member does test positive, and they will provide us with the guidelines and advice on a case-by-case situation. So we're thankful when we had this situation already where we had to deal with them with the student, and I was very impressed with their quick response and the advice that they gave us and the way that they helped us think through that. So we will be in constant contact with them. There's a question related to whether or not desks will be sanitized between classes. And the answer is yes. We've built in 10 minutes between classes into the schedule. And in collaboration with our director of facilities, we have special equipment. It's a spray that can be easily brought into classrooms and cleaned. So that will all be, that schedule will be synchronized. And we're also making sure that we have additional custodial staff on during the school day so that they'll be able to assist with cleaning.
Yep.
Let's see, are we missing anything else? And then just the last one is, if there is a number of COVID positive cases, will that trigger a return to exclusive distance learning? And again, through constant contact with the Rhode Island Department of Health and the governor's office and the Rhode Island Department of Education, they will make that call. And it will be a community by community basis in some situations, but in other situations, it could be statewide.
Yep. Thank you. We have a question related to food service. What's the plan for lunch aid programs and I guess wearing masks during this time? And so clearly we're gonna provide lunch to all of our students. We have spoken with our vendor Chartwells. Chartwells will be able to provide hot lunches. So we're very pleased about that. It will not be the same range of choices that they may have had before. We think, and I'm looking at Tina to see if she like shakes her head like, yeah, I thought the number of entrees would be three different, yep, 3 different entrees. And what's gonna happen is, as Dr. Santa already mentioned, the cafeteria can only be used by 1 to 2 classes. The students would have to sit 6 feet apart within their one group, and then the 2 classes would have to be 14 feet apart. So we are right now working with a local manufacturer in Bristol to get samples of what the plexiglass partitions would look like. And then once we have them and can take a look at them, then we're going to place our order. And because they're local, we certainly expect to have them in time for school to begin. And so that's one option. The other option is that we know that students at the high school are going to have multiple locations for lunch. We do have to work through the particulars. So basically, it would almost be like a sign up, and they would sign up for their lunch location. The lunch location might be the cafeteria. It might be the library. It might be 1 or 2 other rooms. It could also be outside in the courtyard. And so those are options. We also know that we're going to have an outdoor tent. We think that we're going to utilize that as a classroom. And we're going to put one of those, at least one, in at every building location. But we actually may have more than one in a couple of locations. Next is about mask wearing. I think we have handled that. Oh, this is interesting. Why will high school students be permitted to remove their mask? Yeah, I think we have resolved that. So people are going to wear masks. They're going to have to wear masks all day. What's going to happen, however, is I'm going to ask Dr. D and her team to work to schedule opportunities for kids to get outside, to be more than 6 feet apart, to be able to remove their mask for a brief period to get some fresh air. But it looks like we're going to wear masks all day. How will Mount Hope handle non-compliance with mask wearing and social distancing rules? I think we will handle that just like we handle every other situation that arises. Someone's going to have a conversation with the individual, help to convince them to become compliant and to do the types of things that we expect of all of our Mount Hope Huskies. Our students are they're good kids, right? We explain to them what the expectations are, and by and large, they help us. They do the right things. In the rare occasion when they don't, we'll have a conversation, and I am certain that we will be able to resolve it very quickly. What happens if a family student refuses to wear a face covering in common areas? If that happens, we will talk to the student and the family. I think with the new guidance that's coming out, it's very clear that face coverings are going to be required. So we, I think this is one of those things that you have to, I mentioned this to the governor today. I don't want our staff to get into situations like we're seeing in some stores and things where they're having arguments with individuals over wearing masks. All the legitimate science tells us that wearing a mask is among the safest ways to prevent the spread of the virus. That is what we're going to operate. That is the premise that we're going to operate under. And any family that refuses to do that, we can have a conversation, but it does seem that distance learning might be the right option for that family, unless there is some underlying medical reason that would require some sort of change. And then if that's the case, we will handle that on a case-by-case basis. So it's no longer going to be optional outdoor learning. If students are able to return for the fall in any capacity, is there consideration being given to creating outdoor learning spaces? Absolutely. So I think we placed the order for the tents today. And so we're going to have tents at every school. So it's going to be an outdoor learning space. Other teachers will be encouraged to take their students out, but make sure that we, so number one, teachers will not be able to take their class out without the approval of administration. They will not be able to take their classes outside on their own. Oh, it looks like a great day, I'm just going to take my classes out. They need to get pre-authorization from their school administrator, and they need to stay in specific locations for safety reasons that are not COVID related, but are the normal safety reasons that we as school administrators are concerned about every single day. Let's see what's next. What is the roadblock to COVID testing being conducted for all students and staff? The governor mentioned today that all of the labs are being, it seems that the labs really are overwhelmed with the number of testing samples. And so I think it's just a capacity issue. It is clearly something that needs to happen. If there is a suspected a case of COVID in a building, what we would want is we would want the ability for the student or the staff to get tested and those results to return within 24, 48 hours at the latest. And right now, we don't think the state is meeting that time frame. And so it's something that I know that they're working to address. Let's talk about HVAC. George, I saw George somewhere. There he is. All right. Does the HVAC system at the high school bring fresh outside air into the building?
Yes, it does. For every classroom in the building, we're required by Rhode Island Department of Health to have 19 separate air changes in the 6.5-hour time period. So we have exhaust and air intake in every single class.
All right, that's good. And there's another best practice appears to be ventilation systems being set to 100% outside air and 100% exhaust air in order to achieve the highest possible air exchange rate, such as being being used at a casino. How does the school ventilation systems compare to that?
Currently, the intake and the exhaust work together. And if the classroom teacher were to adjust their thermostat, they could easily open the vent to 100% if they chose to do so, or it's all on a building management system, and from one central location, we can turn them all on to 100%.
Okay, so I guess the question that I would have, because I think this is a great question, right? And by the way, folks, every day we learn more and more about things that we didn't know about. So, right, so I wonder if this is something that between George and Tina, we can look into if they're saying from an air quality perspective, it might be best to set it at 100%. And we have the capability to do that. I think first we need to confirm that that's what needs to happen. And if that's the case, could we do that? I think I'm hearing George say we could.
We definitely could, but I would have to see that in writing and be shown how that would be the best practice before we made that move, because that's a pretty drastic move.
Absolutely. So let's see it first. Let's see if we can find out, I don't know if it's OSHA or somebody else, the Rhode Island Department of Health. Let's see what they say about that. That's a great question. Dr. Santa, you want to jump in or you want me to take a few more?
It's up to you.
All right, let me take, you know what? I'm going to take these options and then I'll toss the schedules to you and to Dr. D. What is going to be done for the 9th graders to provide them with orientation to the high school? Dr. D, you want to take that one?
Sure. We've actually been doing a lot of brainstorming around that. And what we'd like to do is what our current thinking is. Of course, we know that could change depending on what's, tomorrow. But our current thinking is putting together, which we already have started, a virtual tour of the high school with a presentation from myself and some of the other staff members that we would be able to stream out to all of our incoming 9th graders. And then what we'd like to be able to do is have just brief building tours with all of the 9th graders coming into the building, that's what we would normally do in our orientation session. But in much smaller groups. So maybe in 30-minute intervals, having smaller groups coming into the building, maintaining social distancing, but, getting an opportunity to get familiar with the building, find their locker, look where their homeroom is, what we would call walk your schedule, so that you would be familiar with where your classes are, and be able to meet some staff members, your guidance counselors, some of our support staff, on a limited basis, and having, instead of one large gathering that we would normally do, we would have those tours happening in much smaller groups over the course of a few different days.
Okay. And so, yeah, it would have to take a number of days to break up approximately maybe around 240 students, ninth graders. So we'd have to do that over a period of days.
Mhm. Yes, or over the period of, from a 4 to 5 and then 5 to 6 and then 6 to 7, have various times and folks could sign up for those. So that's our current thinking right now.
Okay.
We're open to suggestions and ideas if other people have any ideas as well. So thank you.
Okay. Have you come up with a definitive plan for children going back to school? You provided options and scenario. What's the final decision? Parents need to know for certain what their children will be facing when they go back to school. All right, so this is interesting. So I actually, as a school superintendent, the school committee does not have the final decision-making authority in this case. The decision will be made by the governor, the commissioner of education, and the Rhode Island director of health, and Dr. Alexander. And those are the entities that are making the decision as to where the state is in terms of phases and what plan will be implemented. The plan, or excuse me, what model of instruction will be implemented. We provided the plan so that they would know that we would be ready based on any option that they selected. And so we will be ready depending on what they tell us. For the high school, I think it's really easy. The high school is coming back on a hybrid schedule, 2-2-2. And the other option, if we see a spike, would be a limited, which would really mean that every grade level would attend school 1 day per week. We don't see that as likely. We see either the hybrid schedule where half the student population are coming to school, or a full distance learning. We actually don't think that the data right now would indicate that they would make a selection of a full distance. So it looks like hybrid. I cannot say for certain that that's the selection, but that's what it looks like today. If enough families opt to distance learn, can other families opt to physically be present in the classroom every day? That is a great question. And I think the issue is going to be whether or not we have space available to keep students in class socially distant 6 feet apart. And so I cannot make a blanket statement that the answer would be yes. I can say that if there are any parents that would like that as an option, they need to email Dr. D and myself, and we will put them on a list, and we will take it into consideration. I will mention that the first students that would have a priority for attending school every day would be students that have unique challenges, where attending school every day might be of a benefit to them for their unique challenges. And so that would be the first group that we would want to review and offer that opportunity, space permitting. And then after that, it would be families that are choosing that as an option if space permits. Let's see. If someone said that their child didn't learn much during distance learning, will the students at home be watching the live instruction with the limited students at the same time? The answer is yes. How do 3 AP, okay, we have a student taking 3 AP classes, several labs. How does that fit into virtual learning? I'm hoping for partial in-person instruction. I think certainly you have that choice to have your student attend in the hybrid model. I know that we spoke with students that participated in AP classes. Clearly it was a different environment last year, and we hope to make several improvements for that. I don't know what we're going to do with a lab, other than there may be opportunities for some of the labs to be virtual and not occur every day. What's the state criteria for opening schools in person versus all online? I think the governor mentioned the metrics that she was going to use, that she and other state officials were going to use today during her press conference. I think there are 5 of them. Will our choice for full distance learning versus hybrid have any effect on our son's course selection? None. Your course selection is your course selection. The only issue we may have is whether or not we have enough students to run a course. I'm looking at Michelle King. Any comments about that?
Whether we have students to run courses? No, right now our courses are all running. The ones that have been built into the schedule's built, the courses are assigned, we're good to go.
Yep. Well, the choice of hybrid versus distance learning. So let me just say, folks, and so we need to, so we're gonna help the model of distance learning, the model for the high school. The model for the high school is what we are calling hybrid, which is a version of distance learning where they are physically in the building several times per week and physically at home learning at the same time. So it's not one or the other. Hybrid, it gives you distance learning, but it also gives you in person. And that will be decided, we think, by the governor no later than August 17th.
Dr. Brice, could
Yep.
I just address one thing, because it's come up a couple of times now, and I just feel like having, being a science teacher by trade, I just want to talk about, I know there are many parents who are concerned about AP courses with labs and labs in general. And I don't want families to think that, labs have gone away. I think we need to very seriously consider how we run labs, but I am confident that we can find a way to do so safely, even in a hybrid model, have kids have the lab experience when they're in the building with PPE and proper, I'm confident we can figure out how to do it safely so that there will be lab experiences for our kids. We can't completely remove that experience.
Yep.
So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, let people know that is a conversation we're having and we are trying to address that.
Yep.
And I think we should add too that a lot of questions came up with other hands-on type courses. What will that look like? I know Mr. Bartasevich is here as well, and it will be something that we are working on. So, with students that are, in person or at home, we're working on what will that look like, that they're doing some of the actual work when they're in the building, and then, some of the follow-up when they're at home and vice versa. And so those are constant conversations that we are having at this time. So
Yep.
stay
Thank you.
tuned.
With the hybrid model, when will we know which days will be students will be in school and they will be virtual?
Yep, we're creating a year at a glance document so that everybody will be able to see between now and the end of the school year what days you'd be on, what days you would be off, assuming we would continue in the hybrid model throughout the course of the school year. So we're creating several documents to communicate out with schedules and so on. So it should be crystal clear, we hope.
Yep. Next question, do you expect students to have the schedule they expect to fulfill their path to college? Interesting question. I'm going to give a bit of a snarky answer, and here's why. We actually have college students all over the country that are taking courses online. So I do think that especially at the high school level, if students are able to participate while they are in high school in advanced placement courses, in dual enrollment courses, that recent high school graduates are able to participate online, I think the quality of the education they receive is going to be enough to prepare them to be successful in college. And so I also think, editorial comment, distance learning is never going away. Distance learning is never going to go away. Now that we've done this, what I believe it provides for school districts and schools, not just in this state, but all over this country, is it expands our range of options for young people. And so I would not be surprised if once we get past the virus and dealing with the pandemic, that we start having conversations about, we really want to run this particular class, but we aren't able to fit it neatly into our 6.5-hour day schedule. But we could run the class from, right after school for another hour, and students could stay on campus if they choose, and they could go to a classroom and participate in the class at that point, or they could be at home and they could participate in the class. Corporations are working virtually. Other businesses are working virtually. Colleges are implementing distance learning. I believe distance learning is not something that is just going to go away after this is over, but it is going to become an integral part of education moving forward. Let's see. Oh, a parent is asking saying that multiple places to find assignments is difficult. It would be helpful to have a detailed syllabus for each class. So they want multiple syllabi, right? And I actually like the idea, right? I just don't know if we thought about it. Dr. D?
So, most high school teachers do give out syllabi to their students, which covers the main topics, assignments, things like that. What it does not have is the specifics, which I think is what the parent is asking for here of, the date an assignment, all assignments will be due, when tests will be given and things like that. That becomes very difficult because you might get behind a day, you might be ahead a day, and so on. I think that I agree in the sense that with potentially 7 courses, you have 7 Google Classrooms to oversee. A student will be in their Google Classroom for math and in their Google Classroom for English, but they are separate classrooms. The teachers do have the ability to, if the parent wants to receive, to add the parent to receive messages through the Google Classroom, where if an assignment is given, if an assignment is due, or announcements that are being made, that the parents could also get that. But then you do get overwhelmed because you're getting all of these things from all of the different classrooms. So the students have gotten really good at, for the most part, of keeping themselves organized with what needs to get done. So, there is to an extent, we can do that with the syllabi, but for specifics, it's got to be done in Google Classroom.
That's right.
And I think there's a difference between a syllabus and a pacing guide. And so a course syllabus isn't designed to provide a pacing guide with content and assessments, et cetera. A syllabi is to really outline grading and practices and an outline of the course content.
Thank you. Next question. With students being in school 50% of the time, will we prioritize which classes they will have on their days at school? Someone's commenting, they don't want, while they're physically in the building, they don't want them to have gym. I think the way the schedule is going to operate, whatever day that you are physically in the building, whatever classes you have that day will be the classes that you participate in.
And it's important. I was going to say it's important to note too that they will rotate through all of their classes on a regular basis. So.
Will students change classrooms, or will teachers come to each class, and will masks be required at all times? Yes, masks will be required at all times. Students at the high school will change classes At the elementary and middle school, they will not. And we've got that process worked out for them. Great question. Will sports and afternoon clubs still be offered? The answer is yes, but different. So right now, the Rhode Island, Rhode Island Interscholastic, where's Christy? Interscholastic League, hey Christy, is still working through their proposal. I can tell you that if you want to get a sense of how difficult it is to think about offering sports in the fall, you have no place to look at other than professional sports, and look at the difficulty the leagues are having, look at the difficulty colleges are having. The NBA and the NHL, I said this earlier, look like the two leagues that have the strongest program, but that's because they put all their players in a bubble. They test them at least once a day. I think it might be twice. If you leave the bubble, you have to automatically go in, for any reason, you go into either a 14-day or a 10-day quarantine where you have to stay in your hotel room for the whole day. And so they've got the strongest. Major League Baseball looks like problematic, to say the least, with the Florida Marlins potentially, having games suspended, don't know when they're going to play again, things like that. I think it's going to be difficult. I would not expect if there are sports in the fall that all the traditional sports that usually occur in the fall would happen. Namely, I cannot imagine that football and soccer would occur, but clearly that's something that they have to work through. Afternoon clubs could still be permissible, but again, I think as we are thinking through this, part of the issue would be you want those clubs to be outside in the fresh air, with students socially distanced, and they're going to have to wear a mask. So it's a situation where those clubs are not well attended at the start of the year. It's not until we get into the later part of the year, get past the pandemic, whenever it resolves itself or gets resolved, that those come back in strength. I don't know if Dr. D, if you got any comments about after school clubs.
I mean, I think that depending on what the club is, we've got so many clubs and activities that happen after school. The general rule of thumb would be if the group is small enough and you're able to maintain social distancing while wearing a mask, I don't see why we still could not run that club, and still be successful with it, even if it's in a classroom, as long as it's 20 students or less and they're maintaining that social distancing, and some would be able to be outside.
Yep. We got another question about winter sports. We haven't figured out, and RIL hasn't told us what they're doing with fall sports, so way too early to speculate on winter sports. A staff member wrote a question about, we're going to give this to Tina. Tina, you want to take this? Will staff members be paid if they are required to quarantine, or will they have to use vacation or sick leave?
So, good question. It's obviously stuff we're working out. We're going to put out an FAQ, so the way it appears to work is that if they are quarantined due to a connection with school, then yes, they will receive under the law. They'll receive up to 10 days is what the law says of days and not have to utilize their accrued time. If, however, they are quarantined due to going on a weekend trip or something like that, then that quarantine would not be eligible for use of the time under the statute.
All right, thank you. The next questions are student support services. I'm going to start and then turn it over to Ed. What measures will be in place to support students in regards to social emotional well-being and or a student who find themselves struggling with schoolwork? The other question is about extra help for students with IEPs that are having difficulty with distance learning. Some students do fit better with face-to-face learning, absolutely. Will there be extra help for these students? All right, so first and foremost, I think we are, as a district, recognize the importance of the social emotional development of our students. That is one of the reasons that we are implementing at the morning and morning meetings, but at the secondary level, I said this before, I call it real advisory. So here's the difference. So we have scheduled advisory into our schedule, but we may not have always provided all staff with professional development and key sort of session starters on how to run advisory so that it becomes meaningful, as opposed to everybody sit quietly, watch and listen to the announcements, right? That's not what we want. We actually want advisory to be an opportunity for students to discuss and to share around a host of critical topics. So a couple of those topics just for everyone. Character education, we think it's absolutely critical. We think things around identity and helping students to feel comfortable with who they are is also important. We think that, especially at the high school level, our students see what is happening nationally with protests, and they need an opportunity to have voice and to have discussion and to have their opinions heard, whether, right? And so it's not about having one, it's not about having one particular opinion or perspective. It's about giving students the opportunity to make a reasoned argument about what they believe in and why they believe it. And all of these things could be done in advisory. It would build up the camaraderie of students. It would build up individual self-esteem and identity. And ultimately, it is something that would then help the students in their schoolwork to strengthen the arguments and the critiques and the criticism that they need to do of key issues and literature, in social studies and other things like that. We call it, I really call it a foundational piece. And I will assure everybody, I am not someone that wants to sacrifice core academics for touchy-feely, oh, we just want to make everyone, happy. That's not it. The research, and I'll give you a resource. It's CASEL, CASEL.org. They're out of Chicago, the Collaborative for Social Emotional Learning. They are the gold standard in social emotional learning nationally for K-12 or pre-K to 12. And their research indicates that students that attend schools that have a strong social emotional component feel better. And by the way, Mount Hope already has it. Get Ripped, right? Get Ripped is a social emotional learning component. So you guys are already there. What we're talking about is adding a few other things that is going to broaden it and make it as strong as possible. But the research indicates that schools that have a strong SEL or social emotional learning component, students feel better about themselves. Because they feel better about themselves, they're able to advocate for themselves when they or their friends are not feeling well or not emotionally well, that they are more engaged in the learning process, that they achieve at higher levels, and ultimately that learning, what they've learned, travels with them over time, so they are able to cope better when they're in college, when they're in the world of work, and things like that. And certainly, we as a society need individuals that know how to interact with each other, know how to peacefully disagree with each other, and to build, consensus and things like that. And so we really think that it's going to be a critical component. I'm going to let Ed Clark, our director of student services, talk about the IEPs and the work that we're going to do to help students with IEPs and 504s get additional support.
Thank you. As we all know, we hit the ground running in the spring, and as all of our teachers did a remarkable job with providing the supports and making sure that students were engaged to their ability. Doing that work with that in that first week, and then getting through the school year was a Herculean task. Now that we've had time to sit back and take a look at how students performed through distance learning, we need to really tackle it more at obviously the individual basis. That's why there's an I in IEP. So moving forward, as school begins, we will be reconvening teams. We also found out through this experience that virtual team meetings were doable, very efficient, and were helpful in getting actually more students involved in discussing their education as well. We're going to have to do an increased amount of formative assessments in the fall to find out where students actually are in those areas where they need actual support. Were they able to keep pace with non-special ed or non-504 peers, or did they slip or regress a little bit over that time? And once we pinpoint those areas where that regression occurred, have meaningful discussions about how we can individually help these students, whether it's in the classroom with additional special education or TA support, or finding other accommodations that we can use in the virtual world to make sure that they stay on track. The same would be the same with a student on IEP would be the same for a student with the 504, is taking a look at those specific individual accommodations that are already in their plans and what continues to be effective, and also what needs to be enhanced to ensure that they're making the best progress possible.
Thank you. I know that Tina just texted me that she's got some questions, but before we get to those questions, let's open it up to, because people have been waiting patiently. Why don't anybody that has questions, if you have a question, if you go where participants are, if you raise your hand, and we will call on you. We'll give people a couple of seconds.
Dr. Brice, many people don't have their videos on. Have you used the chat at all? I don't see even the chat feature
No,
on here.
We have not, we don't have the chat feature.
Okay.
I've got one hand raised at the moment. Hold on, let me look for, and then we will take I think Tina's got about 6 or 7 questions. All right, Kay Quinn.
Kristen, go ahead and start.
Hi. I have a question that came up at the end from something that was said at the end of the school committee meeting just a couple of nights ago. I'm wondering about something you said that RIDE had given approval to bringing fans into the classrooms. And there wasn't a lot of detail given about that, but so I wanted to find out more. I actually emailed you, Dr. Brice, and a few others regarding this question.
The question, yep.
I wanted to know about the RIDE guidance about fans in the classroom.
Yep, so thank you for the question. And so we actually have, every district has a RIDE, Rhode Island Department of Education contact. We emailed our contact that question. The contact emailed us back and said that fans in classrooms were permissible. So so that's where what we have right now. We don't have like an FAQ, or we don't have something from the Department of Health. We have this one individual that says fans are permissible. The next question for us is there any guidance anywhere that says it's permissible? And then the question is, are we allowing individuals to bring fans, which I kind of think is a problem, or would we purchase fans for those classrooms that would need them. And so that's something that we have to really get an answer. We don't have a good one right now, but we will add it to our FAQs and make sure that we have what I would consider to be documented. You know, having the email is good, but I'd prefer to see a guidance someplace in the guidance from the health department or from the folks that deal with air quality that says, yep, you can have a fan in your classroom, it's permissible. And even with that, we then would get into the situation of, would we allow individuals to bring them? The answer is probably no, that we would want to go out and purchase them. So we would know they're all brand new, they're all clean, and we would go from there. I don't know, Diane, anything else that I missed about the fan question?
No, I mean, it does bring up, the guidance does bring up a good point that we want to keep rooms as comfortable as possible as far as temperature, to allow students and staff to consistently wear their face cloth coverings. So I think that is one of the areas that we're going to continue to research and make sure that we have the best information on. So that along with the ventilation system, we'll be looking into that.
I don't see any other hands raised. So I'm going to have Tina. Tina, can you read us the first question? And either, you know, any of the admin team at the high school, Dr. D, Rob, Michelle, or any of our team can weigh in and answer.
Our first question is, does it matter which form of learning a family chooses in relation to students playing sports? And will there be a town hall like this related to sports?
So it does not matter which model of instruction a family chooses. The student athlete would still be permitted to participate. So, right. So if you learning, you can still have your student attend after school for practices for any sport that we participate in. I think I would toss it to Christy to answer the question about is she going to do a town hall once we know if any sports will be played.
Hi, our plan right now is to do what we usually do before the start of the fall season. Once we have more information from RIL. So I am on the executive board. I've been working all summer with a group of 15 other athletic directors across the state to help come up with a comprehensive plan using CDC guidelines and the National Federation for High School Sports to put a plan together that we feel the principals and superintendents will be happy with. It is still being discussed at the superintendent's level, and we're hoping to get more information and feedback from them in the next couple of weeks. And once we have a little bit more direction, I do plan to hold what we normally would have for student athlete orientation for the 9th grade group, and then also a beginning of the year workshop with parents, but online.
Thank you. Next question.
Our next question is about hands-on learning classes. So the question is about equity, and if some kids are in person and some are distance, how will they get equity, and will there be supplies for at home?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of supplies for students, let's just talk about supplies for students. One of the things that we know, one of the lessons learned from the spring was that having students online for the entire day is not an effective use of their time. And so it is clear that, and that's why we set screen time limits on a daily basis. And so we know that there will be times when they don't need to be on their Chromebooks, but instead they may be reading novels in their English language arts class. They may be working on they may be utilizing a workbook from a particular class. And so as part of us outfitting students pre-K through 12, students will have a number of resources that they will be responsible for, that we're going to provide. It starts with Chromebooks. I can tell you that we've already ordered 1,600 Chromebooks. We are about to process an order for another 1,200. We are going to become a district that allocates Chromebooks to all students K through 12. So the students will have that, and they will be able to very quickly move from in-person learning to, if they're out for a few days, they have their Chromebook, they can use that at home. It's secondary students have been able to do that for a number of years. It will be new for elementary parents and their students, but we certainly believe it is something that is worthwhile. I think the other issue in terms of equity is making sure that we are providing enough resource so that students are able to do some things at home, whether it be for those co-curriculars, whether it be for core academics, and you should expect to see that, and that's what we're planning for.
Next question is about lockdowns and fire drills and how those will proceed.
Interesting question. I will tell you that so first and foremost, can we do lockdowns and fire drills? We absolutely can, even though social distancing is required. I think more than ever, we have to make sure that we are working internally through our plan, but that we're not sharing that plan publicly. And we don't, so I alluded to a little bit of my concern earlier today when I mentioned the outdoor classrooms. And I mentioned that because while we want to have outdoor classroom opportunities and outdoor learning opportunities, we want to have them in places that are secure and safe for our students and staff. And so we clearly recognize that even though we're dealing with a pandemic, there are other issues that we as a school leadership team, district staff, as well as school have to deal with. And we are planning on dealing with that. As a matter of fact, I think we had a safety meeting 2 days ago with the police chiefs from both departments, Chief Lynch, Chief Borges. They individually, as well as their teams, are very helpful in handling things like traffic control around our schools for entry and dismissal, as well as being available to advise us about our safety and security plans.
Our next question is about distance learning. And the question is about whether or not, if a student opts for full distance learning, whether their experience would look the same as a student who is participating in-person, and whether or not they would have the ability to participate in classroom discussions.
So it will look, and so we answered that earlier, but the second piece is kind of new. It will look the same. They will have the teachers will have the document cameras that will be able to show the screen or the board that they're working on. They'll be able to put up their answers and get feedback, and they will be able to participate in discussions. That participation, however, might be because they're sending them a question. We have not figured out how to have however many students be able to ask a question at the same time. Although I did hear an idea today from another district, and because we're all on call so many times, we always share. What one of the districts is having teachers do is have earbuds in one ear so that they can, and they're on a Google Hangout and they get the question they would receive the question that is asked by the student, and they would then be able to respond publicly. The student would hear that is operating virtually, as well as the students in class. Yeah, it is a great, right? Isn't it? Right? So it's funny, the more you talk to people, the more you come up with, and the more you hear great ideas.
Our next question is about the procedure for students proceeding from class to class and how they would social distance at the high school level in the hallways.
Did you want me to answer that a little bit?
Yeah,
and you
go
can
ahead, go
add to
ahead.
it?
Go
So,
ahead.
and Mr. Hanlon, feel free to chime in too. What we're creating right now, there will be 10-minute passing times in between classes. Students will be required to wear their masks at all times, even in the hallways. We are creating traffic patterns, one-ways, so that students will, not be passing both ways. We'll only have half the number of students in the building. And then again, as part of our educating, our student body and our families, as well as wearing masks, the idea will be maintain your 6 feet between each student. But again, we'll have one ways and specific traffic patterns. So if you're going from the A building to the C building, there'll be one specific traffic pattern. If you're going from B to the F building, there'll be a specific traffic pattern. So students should only be going in one direction at any time when they're in the hallways. So that's where we're at right now, and we're still working through that.
And I think I would add 2 other things. So right now, we're in discussions with Chartwells to get signage. So there will be a plethora of signage that will be in the halls, on the floor, that will help students to make sure that they're headed in the right direction. The other thing is, even with all of these students, and it's not the entire school, but it's half the school at one time, in the building, passing, everybody's going to have a mask on. And so that gives us another level of assurance that we are putting kids and staff in the best possible situation.
Our next question is about Aspen. It's asking if we will be requiring that teachers actively use Aspen so that parents can check on their students' progress frequently.
I'm sorry, I was a little too excited about that. So, I started teaching when there were no parent portals, and that I found a DOS program on AOL that I used to keep my grades. And every week I would post anonymously student grades and whether or not they had any missed assignments. So I am a huge proponent that we should, on a continuous basis, update our grades so that, and you know what? It's not about the parents. We want to empower students so that they have agency, so that they check their grades, they're checking their assignments, they see that they're missing something, and they say, oh, Dr. I turned that in. Can you check to make sure that you received it? Oh, you know what? My fault. You know what? You did turn it in and you turned it in on time. I just didn't add it. Or they see they're missing an assignment, and then they make up the assignment so that we don't have students having the mad dash at the end of the quarter, attempting to make up assignments and to get credit. We want them to, it's about agency. It's about real authentic learning in the moment, not at the end of the quarter because they're trying to get a higher grade. So I'm sorry. So that's sort of my high level theory. Are we going to strongly encourage that? I know that there is language, I think, in the collective bargaining agreement, so that we have to adhere to, but I also think that we have to give teachers enough time to be able to turn it around. And I don't know I think right now it's every 10 days they have to update, right?
might be a little bit less than that. I'm.
Is it like 7 days? It's something.
I believe from the time the assignment is due, I believe they have to have it in the grade book within 7 days, I
7
believe is
days.
the
Right.
contract language, once the assignment is actually due in.
Right.
I think to your point, Dr. Brice, and I like the term agency. I think what's
Right.
important is we do have language and we do have expectations for teachers in terms of grading.
Yep.
But I think the other piece of this that we need to work on with our teachers is the conversations, right? So the conversations that they're having with students, especially now, given our circumstances, is that, you know, are you checking Aspen? Let's look at Aspen together. And start to build, especially in our freshmen, and then going forward, some really good habits.
Especially during
not to
advisory.
repress it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think advisory could be advisory could be used to have that conversation as one of those touch points. But I just, you know what, I think in order to be successful, you've got to know where you currently stand. And you then have to be able to advocate for yourself. So I think that we just need to look at that, and given how much information is out there, we want to be able to turn it around as quickly as possible.
Our next question is about the rationale for why we split the hybrid model, for lack of a better term, by alphabet and not by grade level. The question talks about how it seems it would be better to split the grade level for the experience, health, and well-being of the students because they're able to be with their grade level peers. As far as class splits, it's rare to have 2-year grade level difference in the same class. So you could divide it by 9, 10 and upper class by 11, 12.
I mean, I can address it. Go right ahead. So basically, when we determined that we could not have more than 15 to 20 students in a class and still maintain social distancing, we have multiple classes that are by grade level. So we have, you know, our English, math, science, social studies classes, predominantly all of our core classes, including many of our world language classes, are, and PE and health, are by grade level. So you've got to figure that we had an English 9 class that was 28 to 30 students in that class. If we did it by grade level, there is no way that we would be able to maintain social distancing. It's really impossible to do it by grade level at this time, for our hybrid model. Unfortunately, we thought of the idea too. We thought it was great, but then we went, oh no, wait, we can't.
Exactly.
Yes.
Our next question is about virtual support days that we had last year, and will those be implemented with either our full virtual or hybrid model, and will a revised district calendar be presented?
So we actually love virtual days. It's something else that we borrowed from another district. We saw they had it, and once we put it in place, we thought it was a really good opportunity for students to be able to catch up on assignments. We felt it was a great opportunity for individual teachers to be able to meet individually with students or small groups of students. So it just works all the way around. I think what's critical is that the virtual support days, when we looked at the calendar, we were concerned that we did not want every single day to be in a situation where, or every week in a situation where we were eliminating one school day. And so the calendar that we submitted to the state that has been approved is going to be the calendar that we use. And every month there is at least one Monday that will be a virtual support day / distance learning day. And we're still going to work with, we're still working with our teachers to figure out exactly how we're going to utilize those. I don't know if Diane, if you want to add to that.
Sure. So we have in our model, when we go to full distance learning, we do have every Monday as a virtual support day. And part of the rationale was because once a month on a Monday, we'll have a professional development day. And also because you have Monday holidays. So we felt that utilizing a Monday in that way wouldn't interrupt instruction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question is about student workload. So anecdotally, the statement is that teachers were giving out more work than they would have if students had been in person. And if there was any way that Dr. D or the lead teachers can view the excess stress to some students in high school based on this assertion.
So, all right, so we know that last year, and I think one of the things that we don't know if we did a really good job with is teachers understanding that students didn't have one class, but they had all their classes, which is part of the reason why we spent a lot of time discussing whether or not we were going to go to like a block schedule, or like we talked about a number of different permutations of the schedule, because it would address things like this. Having said that, I think what we now recognize is we want teachers to provide students with a level of work that challenges them, but we also recognize that there is a danger of overwhelming some students. I taught to students, Dr. D taught to students, Dr. Santa taught to students who said, we had the full gamut. We had some students that said they're not being challenged, right? That it's virtual distance learning was easier for them than showing up every day. We had some other students that said they were challenged, and some kids in between. I think this year, what we'll see is more of sort of in the middle consistency, because the students are doing both in-person and distance learning.
Dr. Brice, I think Brian Chidesta is on the call. He he could comment briefly on that if you like. We would just have to unmute him.
All right,
He's listed as Mary.
Yep, I saw him.
Okay, got it. All right, he's all set.
I just wanted to comment on that, because as a teacher who lived through distance learning and a parent of two students who were in 5th and 8th grade last year, and they will be in 6th grade, and my son is moving up to the 9th grade this year. I think that what happened is that teachers assigned basically the same amount of work that they were planning to assign had we had normal school. The problem is that because students were online for only a certain amount of time with teachers, because classes met only twice a week for 45 minutes each time and not 3 or 4 times a week for an hour at a time, teachers were assigning the same amount of work, and students did not have the time in class, so to speak, to complete the work, and did not have the access to the teacher that they would have had in a classroom, because we were all doing other things then. And we did do office hours, and that was very helpful if students showed up. But I think that's why there was a perception among a lot of students that the workload was heavier. I think it wasn't that teachers were assigning more. I think it's that they were assigning the same amount in a totally different context that was unfamiliar and much harder for everybody to deal with. Yep. That was my comment.
So thank you for that. I mean, and I think we will, it's one of those things that we're going to continue to monitor. And just like we adjusted screen time, I think, Dr. D, Michelle King, Rob Hanlon are going to look at that. Diane and I are looking at it across the district. And we will be able to very quickly get a sense of whether or not the workload is right. I talk about dosage all the time, right? What's the right dosage for something that we are attempting to implement? We want to get the dosage right, the correct dosage, in my estimation, is that the level of work is rigorous enough that it causes academic stress. So if anybody wonders, do I believe that students should be challenged? The answer is yes. But even while we challenge students, we need to make sure that we are providing supports, scaffolding learning, so that they have an opportunity to build upon what they've learned previously and move toward achievement of the lesson objectives or the unit objectives and what have you. But it is critically important that students be challenged. We do not want work that is so easy for students that they complete it in a very short period of time, and it does not provide them foundational skills with which they can move to the next course, to the next grade level, or to the world of work, college, the military, and beyond.
I have two left. So the first one is, how will gatherings in bathrooms be handled, since we know this has been an issue in the past?
Okay, can I just tell you, okay, we have been meeting since mid-June. That's the first bathroom question I think we have gotten. So here's what we did last year. Last year, we knew we actually assigned staff to monitor bathrooms. We just need to think about what we're doing this year, but I would not be surprised if we are utilizing, clearly we're in the midst of a pandemic, clearly it's an emergency, where we would reduce the number of students available to utilize the restroom at one time. So maybe it's 2 students in the restroom at one time, one comes out, someone else goes in, something like that. But it's something we'll take a look at.
Last one I have for now is, will each class be equipped with hand sanitizer for entrance and exit?
Absolutely. Where's George? He's somewhere. Yeah, there he is, he's waving. All right, every classroom in the district will have a hand sanitizer dispenser somewhere in the classroom. We hope to have them near the entrance. If it's not near the entrance, we're gonna put another one up there. So every student upon entering will have the ability to use the hand sanitizer, get some hand sanitizer. In addition, there will be disinfecting wipes available in the classrooms, things like that. When students walk into the building, I don't know how many entrances Mount Hope is going to use this year for arrival. What's your number? 5, 3? All right, so three entrances. All 3 of those entrances, there will be hand sanitizers there, multiple hand sanitizers for students to use upon entry. They'll walk in, they have their mask, they go right to their class. They will be able to also use hand sanitizers there as well.
And breakfast will be available for the grab and go breakfast, similar as we talked about before, similar.
Yep.
All right, one more came in. Have you considered going back to a block type schedule in order to reduce the number of transitions between rooms in one school day?
We considered it, we cannot afford it. And so I think all of us love the block schedule. We like more time. You know what? I see Michelle King shaking her head like, yes. All right, so I don't know about those science teachers that like the block, but I certainly think that as a former social studies teacher, I love the block schedule. It gives us a chance to really unpack key concepts, maybe host debates, really do things. English, I know, likes the block schedule. Everybody likes the block schedule. The problem with implementing, right, I see Mr. Bartoshevich saying, yeah, we love the block schedule. The problem with the block schedule is not the block schedule. It's the planning periods and the admin periods for all the staff. In order to ensure that everyone gets their required planning period and admin period, it means that you have to actually have more staff. and it's the more staff that create the budgetary issue. All
And it
right.
actually adds a period to the schedule. So you
Yep.
went from 7 periods, you would end up with 8 periods. And so
Yeah.
if you have an 8-period day, you literally have to add, you need teachers to teach kids during that 8th period. So
Potentially adding 5 to 7 teachers for that eighth class.
Yep. So, and if you think about it, just as an average salary and benefits, every time you add a teacher salary and benefits, it's $100,000, right? So, 5, 6 teachers is $500,000.
There's a follow-up question about whether or not we think we'll have enough teachers and staff willing and able to report to in-person to execute our plan. And whether or not we're concerned about the health and safety, obviously saying they're concerned about the health and safety of our staff, which we are as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the reason why it's the first in our plan, health and safety of students and staff. One of the things that I would say to everybody, we are going to do everything in our power to keep everybody safe. But this is absolutely one of those times when, if we get the direction that we are coming back and we're not distance learning, this is one of those times when everybody is a staff member, unless you have a pre-existing, it's not even a pre-existing condition. If you have, I think the language is going to be something to the effect, if you have a current ailment that you are being treated for, that places you at risk for catching COVID-19, if you would be exposed to it, that you are immunocompromised, maybe you're under, you have cancer and you're going through cancer treatment, things like that. Those are we believe the things that the Department of Health would grant an exception for. Everything else means that we're going to have to wear, we all are going to have to wear our face mask. We all are going to have to wash our hands multiple times. I will tell you that that I made a decision today after speaking with C94. We were all on with them, and we talked to BWEA earlier in the day. We're buying, face shields for everybody. So we're going to place an order for 400. We only have about 425 staff in the district, so everyone will get one. We are not mandating that everyone wear the face shield every day. The face shield is not as secure and does not offer as much protection as the mask. The masks are required. But what we also realize is that there may be times through the day where staff would feel that they would want to use a face shield as an added layer of protection. And so we're going to order those. All right. Anybody else? I see Ellen Sharp has her hand raised.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Harry. Thank you so much for this. My question is, if my children are distance learning for the first quarter, would it be an option for them to come in person for the lab classes?
Would it be an option for them to come in person for the lab classes? It's not something that we considered. I think the issue is still going to be space available. But why don't you shoot me an email? And here's what I would say. We have to figure out if we are going to have space. I think space is going to be the key determinant. If we don't have space, we couldn't do it. But if we had space, then I think it might be something that we would look into. The danger is that, once we would do this for one student, I would make the assumption that there would be other parents that would also say, you know what, I want my kid to show up just for the lab. And so it makes it really difficult to do it. That's why I think Michelle King's earlier idea about maybe there are alternatives to labs or things like that is probably a better district approach to resolving this. But why don't you shoot us an email, and we will at least put it on the list and think through it. We don't know if we would be able to implement, but we would at least think through it. All right, anybody else? All right, seeing none, it's now 8 o'clock. Uh-oh, hold on. Darn it, we were almost away. Just when you think you're out, they pull you back in. All right, Rachel McGuire.
Hello. Yes.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Okay. I just had a question regarding the busing, and I don't know if you have addressed this already. But were you able to save money on busing from last year, and what kind of savings do you expect to have this year going forward with the reduced busing, and how can we allocate that?
Yes, so we actually saved considerable dollars last year in about 3 or 4 areas. So we saved money in transportation, we saved money in substitutes, supplies and materials. And so we think that we're going to have a very healthy fund balance of more than $2 million, almost $3 million. We are not expecting to save any money this year on transportation, even though it looks like they will only be able to transport half the number of students. And the reason why is because we're still going to have the full contract for every day that the district is operating. And we also are going to need to add additional staff on the buses to ensure that all students are wearing masks and all students are maintaining social distancing. So where last year we had a savings, this year you would expect that we're going to overspend for transportation probably by several hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's going to be because of staffing. Okay. Anybody else? All right, Dr. D, you want to close us out?
Well, you know what? Let me tell you, you all had amazing questions. It was great to see and hear from some of you. I'm thrilled at how many people came out for tonight. I am, as crazy as this is right now, I am really looking forward to the school year starting and getting back into the building, I hope, and seeing our students. And so keep the questions coming in. You know, some of you are asking questions that we haven't really thought about yet because we're just starting now really to get down into the weeds of determining a lot of those logistics. As we get information, we'll continue to communicate it out to you. And meanwhile, if you have any questions, just please reach out to me and Dr. Brice. We're happy to answer them the best that we can. But thank you all very, very, very much for coming. And I just want to say a special shout out to our district admin team. They've been amazing through all of this as well and very supportive to us
right
as
back
a whole
at
community.
You.
Thank you. Yep. All right. So have a great night, everybody.
Thank
ciao,
you.
ciao.
Everybody
Stay safe.
Evening.
Thanks.